It's great to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the US retreading market and some of the evolutions that we're seeing and what I see for some of the future of retreading, specifically in the US. So TRIB is, so what is TRIB? We're a nonprofit trade association based in the US. We were founded in 1974. Our mission is to promote and defend the retread industry. And we primarily do that through education, marketing, and also working with state and federal governments to help defend the retread industry. I wanted to give a quick overview of the retreading market in the US. We have a long history, originally started in 1912 there. Retreading represents the largest remanufacturing sector in all of the US. With about 51,000 employees, direct employees, and almost 270,000 indirect employment in the US as well. It delivers almost $30 billion in economic value within the US. This is just a look at the types of retreading that happens in the US. Obviously, it's dominated by truck and bus retreading. So 650 plants spread throughout the US. We have about 18 off-the-road plants that are still doing retreading, 5 aircraft tire retreaders, and 5 passenger tire retreading operations. Sorry, if I go back for 1 second. And you'll notice it's heavily concentrated domestic industry because the 10 largest retreaders in truck and bus tires produce over 60% of the retreading volume within the US. So it's concentrated in a few hands. And this is another unique aspect of the retreading market in the US. It's dominated by a handful of brands and players. So obviously you can see the biggest player in the US is Bridgestone Bandag at about 45% of the market. Michelin with Oliver, their sub-brand, at 24%, and Goodyear at 21%, with Vipal Marangoni at 6%, and Continental at 3%. This is just a look at the last few years of the US truck tire replacement market. So the green are replacement new truck tires in the US, and then the blue are retreaded truck tires that are sold. And you can see the retreading market in the US has actually had a very few positive years where we have grown from 14 million to sort of consistently, I mean, those numbers are rounded up, but we were at 15.1 in 2022 and 15.6 in 2023. And we're forecasting sort of a flat market for the retread market in the US with about 16 million retreaded tires produced in the US. This might be unique to other markets as well. 5 truck tire sizes within the US really dominate the retread market. So they make up 74% of the overall market. And you can see the various sizes that are represented there. For the last couple of years, we've done an annual membership survey to try and assess our members' feelings about the retread industry and also have them forecast what they see coming forward this year. And when we looked at, when we went back to last year's survey results and we asked them, what's your revenue going to be like in 2023? 57% of them forecasted an increase in their revenue, and 31% of them said no change. And then there was just around 10% that said we think our revenue is going to go down. And when we asked those numbers again at the beginning of this year, those numbers were surprisingly accurate. So the market overall grew in the US with about 55% of our members seeing revenue growth year over year. And I think that's a very, within the worldwide retread industry, that's a unique story to tell right now because the retread market in the US is growing and it's strong. So as a part of that survey, we also ask our members, like, what are you concerned about? What are your biggest problems? And we ask them to rank order them. And the number one issue that has come up for the last couple of years is human resource issues. How do they find staff? How do they keep staff? How do they train them? How do they backfill an aging working population that is retiring or leaving the industry? And that has come up consistently as the biggest challenge that they face. Supply chain issues, especially on the back of COVID and during COVID, where getting materials in and dealing with shipping issues was a real problem. Obviously, if you're retreading in Europe, you know that the importation of low-cost, low-quality Asian imports is having an impact on the retreading business, and it's a concern for our US members as well. Rising costs, legislative challenges, casing availability. And then last on the list is misconceptions about retreading. And I think the fortunate thing for us is when I started 14 years ago, misconceptions about retreading would probably been in the top 3 concerns that retreaders had. And we've done a pretty good job, not just us, but the retreaders themselves in the US about educating fleets and trucking companies about those myths about retread tires fall apart, retread tires aren't as safe, they're not as reliable, you can't run them as fast, you can't run them in hot weather, all which is completely false. And so we've done a good job addressing those misconceptions. But it's something we still have to think about. And so then I asked our retreaders, like, what do you see for this year? And I have to say there was very little consensus among our members. So I had retreaders say, we see a 20% forecast, 20% increase in revenue this year. And then I had others say, we're going to see a 20% decline in revenue. And it was all over the map. And so I think if we take the consensus of that, we think there's going to be flat retread volume in the US this year. And the factors that are driving that, we're really seeing a softening of freight in the US. So the freight numbers are starting to come down. Supply chain issues have eased, so there's a lot more new tire inventory that has come into the US and is being held at distribution centers or warehouses, which leads to less retread purchases. We have, like Europe has very quickly, it's an election year for us. There's a lot of uncertainty around who's going to be the next president, whether that's going to be a Democrat or a Republican, and that uncertainty creates inertia or a freezing of activity until they can figure out what's going to happen in the election. And then lastly, our US Trade Commission is looking at tariffs on imported truck and bus tires from Thailand. They're in the initial phases of that. We do have anti-dumping and countervailing duties on truck and bus tires coming from China. But immediately after those duties were put in place, all of the Chinese manufacturing, or a large portion of it, moved to Thailand and Vietnam. In 2023, imports from China were actually number 5 on the list of imports into the US. So you can see that and they were number 1. So some of the issues that continually drive the retreading industry in the US, the benefits of retreading, one of the many benefits is the cost savings. So 30 to 50% less than a comparable new tire. And that remains an important issue for people that are choosing tires. The issue comes when you're comparing a retreaded tire, a quality retreaded tire, to a low-cost, low-quality imported tire that might be close to the same price. The challenge for us and for our retread members is proving to those fleets that actually the lowest total cost of ownership and lifetime pricing of that tire, it's going to make more sense to buy a quality new tire and have it retreaded multiple times. But we still have to have those conversations about pricing. We talked a little bit about the supply chain issues. They're softening a little bit in the US. It's less of an issue, but it's still there. And it's something that our members are constantly dealing with. We talked about trying to find employees. So staffing is a critical issue in the US. And one of the things that we've started to do as an organization is to promote retreading as a career. So we've created a section on our website that talks about careers in the retreading industry, and we've created a job board for our members so that they can post for free jobs in the retread industry. That includes international jobs, so anybody that's a member with TRIB internationally, you can post those jobs. I'm amazed at the number of emails and calls I get from people outside the US wanting to come into the retread industry. So we're trying to help our members find employees and providing ways that employees can find the retread industry. There's a lot of consolidation in the U.S. So I talked about those top 10 retreaders representing 62% of the industry. Those top 10 retreaders are getting bigger and bigger. They're buying the smaller retreaders. They're consolidating, sometimes even with their own brand, or they're buying another company's brand and bringing them over to their process. So during COVID, that M&A activity really spiked, and we're starting to see it come back to more reasonable levels, but it is still a big issue in the US. And retreading in the US and probably other places in the world is a really multi-generational business. It's run by families, and many of them are on that third generation, and many of those third generation children are not necessarily interested in coming into the family business. And so those companies, smaller family-run businesses, are struggling to, well, what's next for us? And many of them are exiting the market by selling to a larger company. Last mile delivery is becoming increasingly important in the US. So retreaders are starting to look at moving down in sizes for the types of tires that they can retread and provide to customers. And this is also becoming increasingly important with the increased adoption of electric vehicles. So obviously with the increased torque and weight, those tires are wearing much faster. So it provides a great opportunity for retreaders to provide a solution to these smaller size tires, but still within the commercial trucking industry. And I mentioned the myths that we face, like we still have to talk about it occasionally, but compared to where we were 14 years ago when I first started, it's night and day. I mean, when I first joined, every week I was responding to a magazine article, a TV story, a state legislative body trying to ban retreads, and that has simply gone away, or is very minimal right now. I just wanted to talk a little bit about cost benefits and provide some specific examples. So US trucking fleets save over $1 billion annually by retreading their commercial truck tires. I mentioned the savings that are down to an individual tire of 30 to 50% less. A quality new tire with multiple retreads can deliver 500% more mileage than a low-cost one-and-done tire. And I think this is something we talk about with our members. 87% of the fleets that have 100 or more trucks in the US use retreading. They know that it makes sense for them. These are fleets that have really detailed tire management programs. They're tracking costs down to a fraction of a penny. And they know that the best way to save money and have reliable performance in their operation is to have a strong retreading operation. And our challenge is to go down to those smaller fleets and help them understand that they're going against their own economic self-interest when they buy a low-cost, low-quality tire. So here's a very specific example from one of our members. This is data from 2018 and 19. One fleet came to their retread partner and they said, we want to increase our use of retreaded tires. Help us do that. So in 2018, they bought 12,000 new tires and they retreaded 27,000. So they had a 2.2 to 1 ratio of retreads to new tires. They shifted that ratio in the following year to 3.8 retreads to new tires. So for this one fleet, what did that generate? Over $4 million in savings right to the bottom line. And that fleet was also interested in their environmental impact. And so they tracked the environmental impact of making that switch. So 1.5 million kilograms of CO2 saved, again, one company, 236,000 gallons of oil saved, and 18,000 tires that were kept out of landfill and reused before they could be recycled at the actual end of their life. So imagine this happening over and over again with fleets of various sizes and the impact that this can have, both from a cost perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. And I'm often, when I'm at trade shows and I'm talking to individual owner-operators and someone says to me, oh, I don't use retreads because they fall apart and they rip up my trailer, or I see them on the side of the road. And since 1995, there have been 5 independent studies that have looked at the performance and reliability of retreading. Every single one of them, at the end of them, came out and said, you know what, we should actually use more retreaded tires. So the state of Arizona, historically very warm location, the state said, you know what, we need to ban retreads because we see them on the side of our roads. Well, so they picked up fragments, they studied them. What they found, they were new tires and retreaded tires in exact equal proportion. And it has nothing to do with the manufacturing process, the retreading process. They're run underinflated, overloaded, they hit debris on the road. And so the state of Arizona actually said, you know what, we should be buying more retreaded tires because it makes sense for our state government. It saves us money. And so we are able to leverage these studies when we have conversations with people about reliability and performance. And people are often surprised at all of the places that retreaded tires are used. So every day that school is in session in the US, millions of kids are being driven to and from school on school buses. So you can imagine if there was a reliability or safety issue with retreaded tires, we wouldn't be transporting our kids on them. Fire trucks, ambulances, aircraft, 80+% of the aircraft that are landing and taking off today are running on retreaded tires. And they can be retreaded around 11 times as an average. So if you think about the speed and weight and friction that's going on with those tires, again, no issues with retreaded tires. The waste industry, massive users of them. Enthusiasts 4x4 off-road, and obviously the OTR business. You're talking about tires that can run into the 6 figures, and instead of using that tire once and then burying it somewhere or trying to have it recycled, you can retread it for incredible savings. And again, multiple times. So the last thing I want to talk, well, not the last thing, the second to last thing I want to talk about is sustainability. And hopefully a lot of you know this or have heard it before, and if you've heard it from me, first of all, it starts with the casing itself. Most major quality new tire truck manufacturers are manufacturing their casings to be retreaded multiple times, okay? And they provide warranties for that. So when you buy a quality brand new truck tire in the US, it's gonna come with a warranty that says, if you bring it back to our retread facility, we guarantee that we will get 2 retreads or 3 retreads out of that tire. Me personally, I don't think a single tire should be sold in the US or in any other market that doesn't come with a warranty that it can be retreaded. Because if that tire can't be retreaded, that is such a negative impact on our environment, and it's also a negative impact on our economy as well. So when I visit a lot of retread plants, and all of them are incredibly green as well, just in their operation. So when the tires are buffed, all of that rubber buffing is collected, gets vacuumed out to a storage facility on their plant. It gets collected by a recycler, and it's turned into recycled rubber mats, mulch, and they're moving into other ways that they can become more environmentally friendly. Solar power, rainwater collection, LED lights, motion-sensitive lights. So they are green themselves in their manufacturing process, and they're making sure that their plants are as green as they can be as well. So this is just the US. What was the impact that the retread industry had last year in the US? So we saved over 340 million gallons of oil, 663 million pounds of landfill diversion, enough energy savings generated by our industry to power 1 million homes for a year, and we decreased overall tire waste by 473 million pounds. So again, I would love to see those numbers continually go up. And that's what we're trying to make happen. So we just recently launched a sustainability calculator on TRIB's website. So fleets or our members can come to our website, and it's a very simple calculator. You just put in and say, how many retreaded commercial truck tires have I bought this year or have I used this year? And it will give you an output of the amount of oil that you've saved, the pounds of waste that you've diverted from landfill as an individual company, and the homes that you have powered through your energy savings. So it's just a very simple, straightforward way for a fleet to see their impact through using retreading. And we're looking at, how can we expand that to make it even more relevant for fleets that are focused on their sustainability missions? Pulling in some of the other calculators that we see. So a UK retreader, Vaculug, which is a very green-focused, environmentally front-facing sustainable retreader. And they have made some very strong carbon reduction commitments for their company. And they also have a carbon calculator that they can share with their customers. Another example, one of our members in Canada, Kal Tire, has what they call their Maple program for OTR retreaded tires that they do. They will provide to their mining and OTR construction customers a certificate that calculates their carbon emission savings from their use of retreaded tires with Kal. One of the biggest Bandag retreaders in the US, a company called Pomps, which is based in the central part of the US, they do the same thing with their customers, their individual customers, and then they look at their overall company. So they did about 1.2 million retreads, I think, last year. And so they look at their overall impact as a retreader themselves in the US. And, if retreaders aren't focused on sustainability, their customers are, especially those bigger customers. And so they're coming to them and saying, hey, we have sustainability targets that we have to hit. How can you help us meet those? And here's a couple of quotes from fleet customers saying, yes, we want to be able to use retreaded tires to save money, but we also want to have a positive impact on the environment. And this is some of their feelings around that. Of course, we are incredibly focused on sustainability. We produce videos, the environmental benefits of retreading. They're freely available on our website. Every day for Earth Day, we produce videos to help promote Earth Day and the impact that retreading has on our efforts to help save the Earth, quite frankly. And then we did a unique program with the state of California. So they have an organization called Cal Recycle, which is very focused on the responsible recycling of tires within their state. So we did a 2-year contract with them, which was a $250,000 contract. And the focus of that was to help lift the rate of use of retreaded tires within the state, which ultimately helps them meet their recycling targets. So a lot of time when people talk about recycling within the industry, the single greatest way to recycle tires is to reuse them as a retread. And then ultimately when they get to their end of life, then you can recycle them. So we were educating state fleets, but also private fleets about the benefits of retreading and trying to lift their rates of usage in California. We produced brochures that we distributed through their various locations throughout California. We produced another video that helped explain all the aspects of retreading and how the fleets in California could benefit. And then we did a series of webinars. Now, we had originally planned to do these in person, but this was during COVID. And so we switched gears and we said we're going to have a virtual plant tour with a number of our members spread throughout California. And I think it actually worked better for us because I think we got better attendance. The people that were able to virtually walk through a plant with a plant manager, have them understand the process, and then ask questions about the process. And nothing will convert someone to a retread customer faster than walking through a plant and seeing how a retreading process is done. Because people, and I was the same before I joined this industry. I didn't understand how it was done. Many people think, oh, well, you just take an old tire, you glue a new tread on, and then off you go. That's why they fall apart. But if you see how a retreaded tire is manufactured, the inspection process, the technology, the quality that goes into it, you could easily say, wow, I could see me using that on my tire, on my truck. So the last section that I wanted to talk about, hopefully I'm okay on time, Dave. But anyway, Okay. A little bit about the future of retreading. So, we've heard so much about AI and its uses in all sorts of different avenues. I think there are parts of the retreading industry that are ripe for usage with AI. So, for instance, one of the big inspection process with the retread industry is the chirography. So you put a tire inside a machine, you take pictures of it, you pull a vacuum on the tire, so you stress it, you take another series of pictures, and you are able to see internal damage that might prevent it from being retreaded, that you can't see with a naked eye. But you still rely on a human operator to look at those images. AI is being used in cancer detection in the US, and they've had great success with being able to detect at a higher rate potential cancer through imagery and also a lower number of false positives. So why can't we use that in the retread industry? And so I think we will see some developments around AI and its use of retreading to help improve inspection technology. So I mentioned people going through a plant and being able to better understand the process. So Bandag in the US recently rolled out a virtual plant tour that you can do from your desk and control and sort of go through a plant, understand the process, play with it a little bit to see a little bit more about how that process works. Robotics is becoming an increasingly important part. So if you're having trouble finding employees, keeping them, well, how can we look at ways that we can not rely on as many employees while also lifting the quality of our production and also increasing our productivity? So robotics is becoming an increasingly important part of the retread industry that they're looking at. But thankfully, if I go back to that family orientation that many retreaders have, those retreaders that have implemented automation and robotics and retreading, at the same time, they're protecting their employees. So it's not like, okay, we're cutting your job, but we want to find a way for you to stay within our family. And so those robotics implementations have not caused job losses as well. So it's almost like they already have gaps in their employee base, and they're filling that with robotics. And this is just an example of a robotic building island. I had a video, but I'm probably going to switch, not do that. I would encourage anybody to search on YouTube for Banvulk, and you can see the ways that they have implemented retreading within their process in that UK retreading plant, which is very impressive. Airless tires. So if tires fail because they lose air, and there's all sorts of automated inflation systems, TPMS, the use of nitrogen. But what if you can find a way to take the air out of the tire so you don't have that failure? And so we're seeing, there's different companies have different products within the US. The one that's probably the most forward so far in the US is a Michelin Tweel, which you see on the left in this it's a lawnmower application. And there are retreaders in the US that are currently retreading those Tweel tires. And imagine if air is not an issue, you can protect the casing so that the casing can be retreaded multiple times. And the plan is that Tweels will be able to be used in consumer, trucking, other agricultural applications. So this provides a great opportunity for retreading as well. Some of the other advancements, I talked about inspection technology, data capture, whether it's RFIDs that go in new tires that gets carried through the entire retreading and manufacturing process. The capturing of data and being able to intelligently use that is increasingly important to fleets, and we're seeing retreaders become a part of that chain to help them capture and use data that's important to them. I talked about robotics, casing development, and airless tires. Obviously, on the one hand, the retread industry has not changed a lot in the last several years. Like, it's still very much the technology that we've used. But on the other hand, there is a lot of development in rubber compounds, tread designs, machinery, the process that we use. And all of those continue to happen. And so I think I think it's a very exciting time within the retread industry in terms of where we go with our next evolution. And I'm starting to see that come through with some of our members. And then I mentioned briefly the electric vehicles and the opportunity that provides for retreading as well. So just a final word on retreading from my perspective. It should be a part of any fleet's tire program. And if you do have it as part of your program, you're going to save significant amounts of money. That one fleet that saved over $4 million. You're going to have a positive impact on the environment. And really, you're taking advantage of the investments that new tire manufacturers have made in the tires themselves. So if you're not retreading, you're throwing away the value of all of that technology investment in the new tire itself. And lastly, you're just going to keep millions of tires out of landfill. So if anyone has any questions, or if you're looking for any information about retreading, please visit our website. There's a wealth of information there. It also has my contact details. I'm always happy to do anything I can to help the retread industry or help educate fleets about the benefits of retreading. So thank you.